Instead of trying to change the white man and your mind, make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be an educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in an emotionless movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalist. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Peace and Black Power family. This is Brother Agyei Tyehimba from Harlem Liberation School. Joining me, we got Dr. Yusef, Bunchy, Shakur, representing Detroit. And we have for you, actually, this is the third, I want to say, incarnation of the Black Power Cipher. And Brother Yusef, man, always a pleasure to have you with me and what I'm doing, to join you in what you're doing. How you feeling today, good brother?
First and foremost, man, as we say in Detroit, what up, though?
What up, though?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Be here with my brother in this third iteration of the Black Power Cipher.
Yes, sir. And I know, Brother Yusef, you were pretty adamant about us doing it again. I was very adamant about doing it again. When you think of the Black Power Cipher, man, like what do you think it brings to the community, to the people?
That's a great question. And we are hip. We grew up in hip hop in terms of the timeline, and I think we borrow in that language of like a lyrical cipher. So the ability to create a cipher to share information, to be able to constructively envision what Black Power is. Not what we think it is, but what it actually is, what it was meant to be. Because in reality, we don't have it, and to achieve it, we have to question why we don't have it, and the ability to dialogue about it. You're from Harlem, I'm from Detroit. Other folks that'll be on here from other parts of America. It will help us shape and answer that question and define what Black Power means in the 21st century.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And as you're speaking, Brother Yusef, we got my lovely queen, Brenda Hilaire. She's chiming in with the Harlem Liberation School Wukusu chant. Wake up, clean up, stand up. And she's hitting you with the what up, though.
I appreciate it. What up, though?
Yes, indeed. I'm going to just throw this in there to support Harlem Liberation School. Brother Yusef is also affiliated with the Community Movement Builders, I believe, and we at some point need to get that information up as well. so that we can support. We have Sounds of St. Elsewhere, who says, looking forward to the program. Props to y'all for starting it up. Agyei Tyehimba, there's an echo happening when Yusef speaks. Make sure the audio is routed to my my headphones. So what I'll do when you speak, I'll make sure I mute.
Okay.
That should solve that problem. All right. So I guess having looked at some of our comments, man, we can get right into it. You know, family, brother Yusef came with some really good questions that he figured we would ask one another. I guess as a way of introducing ourselves and also telling you, something about where we come from, what our background is. Very good question. I'm going to get to those questions in a minute. As I do that, I want to let you know that we're going to have a lot of interesting programming coming up. Sometimes we'll have guests. Sometimes we'll have different topics. So it won't always just be me and brother Yusef. Sometimes one of us will take the lead, but we're going to mix it up. And remember, it's the second Saturday of every month at 2 p.m. Eastern, family. Don't forget. So let's get to these.
At 1 o'clock.
All right. Not 1 o'clock. Brother Yusef was ready. Yusef was an hour early. I had to tell him, brother, no, brothers, it's 2. But that's a good thing. We'd rather our people be an hour early than an hour late. So that's what's up. All right. So we got some questions up. And the first question is this. I want to put a ticker while I'm asking Yusef questions. For those of you who want to know more about brother Yusef and follow him, support him, while he's talking, I'll have his information scrolling on the ticker on the bottom. I suggest and advise you go check out his website and see how you can be supportive. That said, brother Yusef, first question, brother, and after he answers, I'll answer it as well. What was the impact of systematic racism on your family and on your neighborhood while you were growing up in America?
I was at the first start with the migration of my family from Georgia, now Alabama, as my comrade Quasi Cuomo would say, as refugees who are resettled or sought economic opportunities in the North, the urban aspect of America. My grandfather was born in 1897, so I'm literally 2 generations from being enslaved. I'm a second generation of Detroiter. My mother was 15 years old when she gave birth to me in 1973. And in the 70s, I think there's the timeline of the Black experience of the emergence of Black single motherhood. I think it always has existed in some form or fashion within our nation, but our nation was able to protect and hold, as a result of the family structure, wrap our arms around women. Because of the migration and us seeking refuge in the North and also in the West, it stripped us of certain family elements, certain principles as a result of trying to chase the American dream. Going into the 80s, being raised in a post-industrialized city, I repeat, in a post-industrialized city, it changed the landscape of my community and my neighborhood. Where, again, there was always oppression. There was always systematic racism. But it heightened those elements where the pressure my mother felt raised me by herself, but also being a woman mother trying to find her footing, being labeled a welfare queen, being undermined and not finding appropriate jobs. Her humanity was attacked because of her gender. Her humanity was attacked because of her race. And as a boy growing up under that, my humanity was attacked as well. Not because of who I was, but because of who I was related to, my mother. So as a result now at this stage of my life and looking back, not only having a new African revolutionary nationalist thought process, but also having a Black feminist thought process. When I examine my social, the social conditions, and the Black feminist thought process is recognizing the experience of what my mother suffered, not just being suffering as a Black woman, but also suffering because of her gender, being a woman and Black. So I won't say destroyed, but it American the systematic racism undermined our neighborhood and undermined our family structure to the point where we had to it enhanced our ability to survive. And fortunate enough, I was able to come out on the other end of who I am.
That's what's up, brother Yusef. Now, should I answer that? Is that how we're going to do it?
Yep. It's your turn. Not good, bro.
All right. So, I guess the way I would look at it is similar to brother Yusef. I like the way you frame this, the issue of the migration. That's very important. So, my mother, on her side of the family, is coming from Montgomery, Alabama. They're coming from the South, and my mother experiences completely segregated institutions as a little girl growing up. Her mother, Diane Coleman, is involved with the Montgomery Improvement Association, and she attends the church of Reverend Ralph Abernathy, who's the best friend and I guess theological colleague of Martin Luther King Jr. So she's very much involved in the local civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama. And she, because of the systemic racism and segregation, my mother constantly questioning, why can't we go here? Why can't we do this? And her mother, my grandmother, constantly saying education. So education as the way, and education and community organizing, activism as a way, quote unquote, out of subjugation and a way to have a voice for ourselves, to live with some type of dignity and integrity. My mother passed that on to me. Because my father comes out of Harlem and a very repressed time. He's a baby. They're both baby boomers. He's coming up at a time he's really good in ball. The schools are not segregated formally, but they do not have proper facilities as some of the whiter high schools do. Sports is pushed. My father recalled talking about how I think he said the principal or the assistant principal was somehow the basketball coach. I don't know how that was possible. But so my father and a lot of people on the team, including a guy named Earl. Those of y'all from New York know Earl, the GOAT, Manigault, very famous basketball player. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said he was the greatest player never to play in the NBA. Became a strung-out heroin addict. My father played on a team with him, and the coach, who was also the principal, would tell him you don't have to go to class. As long as you play well, you do whatever. So this is all systematic. People may think that's individualistic, but that's a system is doing that. A system is saying, we don't value you as a student. It's kind of like when Malcolm's teacher said, you can't be a lawyer. Niggas can't be lawyers. You just be a carpenter. It's kind of like the system is saying that to my father by saying, you don't have to go to class. I mean, think about what type of shit is that, right? For a school administrator to tell that to a whole team of students. So in other words, my father graduated semi-literate and had to go to class and teach himself how to read after playing ball for the school for all those years. This is all systematic to me. And for a number of reasons, my father played in Rutgers, played basketball, and wound up dealing with drugs. And because of his moving in that direction, his life was cut short at 59. How was he able to get the drugs? Well, systemic racism. Because Harlem, as everyone knows, was flooded with drugs in the 60s and 70s. right? Even though heroin is all over the United States, Harlem is the capital, and you can look that up, of the heroin addiction, the overdosing. Why Harlem? That's systematic too, because of what Harlem represented at the time. New Negro Movement, Cyril Briggs and the African Blood Brotherhood, Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. So all of these things, Harlem Renaissance. I think Harlem was seen as an incubator of radicalism and militancy and black resistance. So I think, and it wasn't the only one. I'm telling you how white people, I think, saw it. And so, and then of course, the Nation of Islam and its very strong Mosque Number 7, led by Malcolm. I think they targeted Harlem in a certain way. So my father gets caught up in all that, but before he gets caught up in all that, he got a little son, man, his only kid. And what he's telling his son at bedtime are not about Jack and Jill and Hansel and Gretel. He's telling me about a man named Nat Turner, who was in dialogue with cooks in the master's house who would grind up glass and put it in the master's food. He's telling me about Harriet Tubman. He's telling me about a brilliant man he got to actually hear and see live named Malcolm X and how he moved him, right? So my father and got books, and he's introducing me to different books. Destruction of Black Civilization, some of W.B. Du Bois' work, Souls of Black Folk, different books he's feeding, right? So it's almost like he may have made certain compromised decisions in his life, but he was very committed to making sure I didn't. He was very big on, he would take me around the drug addicts and say, you see them? You want to be like that? I said, no, sir. No. I was scared to death. Their hands were swollen. Their faces were scarred. They were disheveled and unkempt. I said, no, I don't want to be like that. So that's drugs. I don't want you to ever touch drugs. That's systematic. There's some neighborhoods in this country, well, not as much now because of the opiate addiction, where fathers don't have to have those conversations with their sons. Fathers don't have to say, show them the drug addicts and say, don't be like that. Their fathers are taking them to circuses and museums. You know, they have universities, other discussions. That's systematic. So it's very important that people see the connection between how you were raised, the values you were taught, how you were disciplined, the things that were pushed in your household, the things that were encouraged, the things that were discouraged. A lot of that has to do with outside factors that are systemic and systematic. I think also, though, oppression is funny. It works in ways that are sometimes unpredictable, because sometimes the worst forces and repression produces things that run counter to it. So in my case, growing up in a very gang-ridden, violent, drug-ridden, systematic, except it wasn't heroin. When I grew up, it was crack, right? And growing up with dudes that was murderers, hitmen for hire, crack dealers, whatever they were, pimps. But the effect it had on me, because of my father's teaching, was I'm not going that way. So I deliberately didn't go that way. I went the way of First World Alliance, which was a institution in Harlem that taught political education, but it was very more intellectual. So it was people like Dr. Ben, Dr. John Hewitt Clark, Marimba Ani, who used to be known as Donna Richards, Amos Wilson, Ivan Van Sertima. Those type of people came to the First World Alliance and taught, sold their books and talked about different liberation theories and historical movements. And then going on to 125th and dealing with the book vendors. And so all of these systematic forces, which are designed to destroy us, sometimes creates in us a resistance that has the opposite of the intended effect. So this means that I was pushed into different places that raised my consciousness. I met many great people in Harlem, and I went off to school, right? Because thinking about what my mother's thing was, and my father, who was deprived of what he felt was his rightful education in high school. I had both people saying, you got to go to school, you got to go to college. So that was big in the household. So I went off to Syracuse University. And then that's a whole nother story. But the point is, those are some of the key ways I see systematic racism affecting my family and neighborhood. In my neighborhood, you was spitting rhymes, you was an MC doing hip hop, you was breakdancing, doing electric boogie, you was doing graffiti art on the trains. You may have been going to school, or you was robbing people, knocking people over the head, breaking into people's homes, whatever you were doing. And how do we know it's systemic? Because Yusef, who did not grow up in Harlem, could tell you similar stories where he grew up. You start to see that this wasn't just happening in Harlem. It was happening all over the country. And some would say all over the world where Africans and New Africans live, members of the diaspora. We all have the stories of the drug dealers. We all have the story of the hyper violence, the hyper machismo, the posturing, the hyper chauvinism. All of that exists all over the place. And that's not because we're some type of backwards or naturally dysfunctional people. It's because we were oppressed in similar ways in different parts of the country and the world. So I guess that's how I would probably address that, Brother Yusef. And look, the Queen talks about her father struggled with dyslexia that was undiagnosed at the time. He is kicked out of school in the 6th grade. This is, I really hope people are really like factoring this in. The Black Panther Party, Shakur says truth. Yes. These are systematic. These are things, in other words, that had nothing to do with just your mom, your auntie, your grandma, your pops. These are things that are outside of them that impacted them. And that's deep.
Yeah, and before we go on to the next question, I just want to put in the context. Dr. Bobby E. Wright once said that we can't continue to use white theories to define black social phenomenon. And because we don't look at our social phenomenon out our own experience, we allow it to give birth to some level of shame. There's pain that comes with it, and we run from it. But in reality, as a result of what Dr. Bobby Wright was teaching us, there's pathways for liberation in our personal experiences, and not personal as an individual, but personal with as our collective. And the personal is political. I repeat, the personal is political. And as we begin to now read the autobiography of Status Shakur, read the autobiography of Malcolm X, read Destruction of Black Civilization, it helps us make more sense of our own selves, but also makes it more sense of those books. Because those books are not boogeymen or boogie women. You know, they're also tied to our personal stories, and our ability to free ourselves of our personal oppression allows us to put us in a position to become our own liberator.
Yes, sir. And just to add on, the Queen posted this. This is very important when we talk about systematic stuff. She says, in our community, the quality of food was unsatisfactory and overpriced, which affected us economically and affected our health. And I wanted to say this. I was in a documentary and trying to help this person understand what it was like growing up in Harlem in the 80s. I told him that in order to get really good food, my mother would take me way downtown, several miles away from where we lived, to get good food in the white people's neighborhood. In order for me to get a good education, as she defined it, she took me way downtown again, in the same neighborhood where she got the food, right? But if I wanted to get guns, cocaine, or heroin to sell or use, if that were my taste, then I could go in a 5-block radius of where I lived. I want people to really think about what that means, that to get the things that were life-sustaining, you had to go so far away, and to get the things that can cripple and retard your life was right there. That's systematic again, right? So I want people to put that into context. And And then I guess we can move on. Black Power. Shakur says agreed. Thank you both for teaching us. I have to go. We'll go to YouTube later. Thank you, good brother, for joining us. You ready for the next question, brother Yusef?
Let it rip.
All right. My brother, what led you to develop a black revolutionary consciousness? And also, can you talk about some of your success and maybe some of the pitfalls or challenges that you face operating under that framework?
So building off the first question, I ended up co-founding a gang in the city of Detroit at the age 13, 14 years old. I became what I identify as a streetaholic. And being a streetaholic, I also identify being socially molested. Repeat, I was socially molested like many of us, where have been taken advantage of by older guys, by the streets that damaged my humanity. As a result of engaging in street life, it led me to go to prison for a crime I didn't do. And while in prison, my mother's prayers was answered, where I met my father. And out of that relationship, will have a tremendous impact on me redeeming and transforming my life. It was very fortunate for me when my father had already begun to redeem and transform his own life. He joined an organization in the Michigan Department of Correction called the Melanic Islamic Palace of the Rising Sun. It was a political religious organization that was started inside the prisons in the late 70s or early 80s. A fun fact about the Melanics, and you remember the key word Islamic, but the prophet that they recognized was Nat Turner. I repeat, the prophet that we recognize was Nat Turner. So upon coming to prison and his relationship me and my father would build, God, the creator being the best planner, he would put us on the same prison a year later of my time in prison. Prior to that, my father and I are writing letters to each other, and he's explaining to me some of the steps that he began to take towards his own transformation. And in my first letter that I wrote to him, I was functioning illiterate because I had a street mentality. So I misspelled words, couldn't really communicate through a writing format. And at the end of my father's first letter to me, he said, P.S., if you don't have a dictionary, you need to get one. When Malcolm X was in prison, that was the best book that he read. It was amusing, but also was real. And the first time that me and my father had opportunity to really have some quality time, and I use that word loosely in prison, and the quality time was walking from the gym to our housing unit, and we wasn't in the same housing unit, and we're walking as slow as possible. I mean, just imagine thinking about being enslaved, and you're passing on messages, and you're trying to cultivate something towards freedom. I mean, that's the type of environment that he's creating for me while building this image in my mind. And he told me that the greatest gift that a father can give his child is his precious time. And up to that point, he had neglected me in giving his time. And from that moment on, he would do all in his power to give me his time. And part of giving me his time was sharing with me what was some of the things that helped him rebuild and transform his life, and which one was the autobiography of Malcolm X. I took that book and I began to read it. And reading that book allowed me to dissect myself. And I began, and another book that I read was called Black Women in White America. And mind you, I'm doing all this is taking place at the tender age of 19. And after I read that book, Black Women in White America, I cried myself to sleep that night because I realized that if I had died at the age of 19, my legacy would have been a gang member. And I had betrayed everything that would have meant to be Black in America. And because I had no knowledge of what it meant to be Black in America, I had no responsibility to continue the legacy of continuing to fight, to stand on the standards that those who had come before us, those who were presently in that moment. Now that I had the knowledge, it helped eradicate this game banging thought process that I had, this undeveloped thinking and how I saw the world. And now it demanded of me to think Black, be Black. But to think Black and to be Black was to love myself, to love my people, and to and that was the first step and part of the process was through a religious orientation, and I stayed committed to that process, and staying committed, it challenged me to outgrow the religious component of it. It challenged me to develop a revolutionary nationalist aspect, and the entry point was reading Seize the Time, reading other revolutionary books, and then from there, I got introduced to the RNA, Republic of New Africa, that was founded in Detroit, May 28th, 1968. So this continued pursuing of knowledge continued to allow me to evolve, continue to develop my political consciousness, my ability to organize and help others develop their political conscience. So I made a conscious decision to not just only be a Muslim at one point, but to be a revolutionary. And not only just to be a revolutionary, but to be a New African revolutionary nationalist. And so sometimes we confuse nationalism and revolutionary as the same. They're not necessarily the same. Do they align? Absolutely. So it's the revolutionary in me that challenged the nationalist. And it's the nationalist that challenged the revolutionary. Because it's the revolutionary in me that desire for the world to be free. But it's the nationalist in me that desires to see that New African people are free, but also realizing if New African people are free, then it doesn't matter if the world isn't free as well. So I exist in both those worlds, and it's a balancing act that I walk. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I don't. I think some of my pitfalls is like we don't realize when we gain knowledge and knowledge that others don't have, it breeds a certain level of arrogance. And even though you may be right with what you know and how you communicate it can be wrong. How you communicate with the knowledge you have can be wrong. It could deter others who want to listen to you. It could create tension because again, we all have suffered from high level of self-hatred. So who wants to be around an uppity Negro? Who wants to be around an uppity nigga who think they know everything? And fundamentally, it's about organizing people. It's about engaging people. And if you think that you know everything, then why would someone engage you? So that was some of the pitfalls, and I had to learn. And relearning my community, I had to put the knowledge I had on the back burner to learn my people. And learning my people, I mean, I'm talking about like the people that was in the ghettos, people that was in the hoods, who were struggling. They may not have been struggling the way we were struggling, or should have, but through that process, it allowed me to embrace them and them to embrace me. And then more important, allowed them to trust me and trust the things that I had to say, but it taught me how to engage them and share that. So now we have built community institutions. We have community organizing programs. All those things are now coming out of the program. But history has taught me how to continue to grow and better, because transformation is not a one-stop shop. It is a continual thing as well as continue to gain knowledge.
I would definitely, I guess the way I would approach that is I partly answered it in the first question. My dad is the primary reason why I developed a Black revolutionary consciousness, because he introduced me to the basic, he just had a birthday 2 days ago. It would have been his 78th. He introduced me to these very important figures. And my mother would tease him. I remember she would say, "George, why you keep telling me he's supposed to be reading bedtime stories?" He said, "Well, this is my bedtime story." And he would tell me the stories of, revolts and why people ran away, the songs they sang and the coded messages. And I was just very wrapped up in that. And then when I was 12 or 13, I was grounded for some reason. My mother grounded me. When my mother grounded me, it meant I could only go out the room to use the bathroom and go to the kitchen to eat. Could not watch TV, could not use the phone, could not go outside. So I was miserable. So I'm going around my room trying to find something to occupy my time. And I go up in these shelves in my room and I find a very old, withered, yellowed paper, crackling and breaking off copy of Malcolm X Speaks. I read this book in that weekend and I'm like, this is the guy my father had been telling me about. Now I'm reading his words in speeches. And when I tell you I was completely blown away. And I was completely feeling like, yeah, I feel this. And I would love to be like this man in some way. I knew I was going to be him. You know, I had great admiration, but I said, I want to be like him. So up to that point, that accelerated me being what we would call a bibliophile. I always read a lot of books. I read early. My father encouraged that. So I was reading, kind of teaching myself and listening to my dad. And I was like, one thing I want to do, I want to see if I can go to the library. So I started going to the library and getting out the books I could on Malcolm X and other things. And that led, of course, to other things, looking at the bibliographies of the books. So films, documentaries. I think I mentioned that I went to First World Alliance meetings. I started going to 125th and really based on the books that the intellectuals were talking about in the First World Alliance meetings, I would go to 125th and I'd inquire about those books. And back then they sold those books on the street. Today they selling stuff like "Bitch Better Have My Money," but back then they were selling a Fire Next Time. I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. They were selling Man, Child in the Promised Land and Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. So it was a real political education in real life in real time. And then, of course, I would go to Black Liberation Bookstore where I would meet Una Mozak, who's the proprietor. Now, Una Mozak was very clear. She said, most people think I'm a bookseller. She said, no, that's my front. I'm a revolutionary. This space is to organize people and to teach ideas and to help people come together for revolution, for Black revolution. She herself had fought in the Ghanaian Revolution where her bookstore was bombed with her in it and her comrade was killed. And she was injured, and then she was kicked out of the country and came back to the United States and started Liberation Bookstore. So this is what was going on with me, going to these different landmarks in Harlem at the time, these cultural, historical landmarks, building with elders who were, most of them intellectuals, many of them were political activists, revolutionaries, who schooled me and pointed me in the direction of more books, more books. Eventually this would evolve to going to slave theater in Brooklyn, Alton Maddox and the United African Movement was very heavy in slave theater. Amos Wilson was very heavy. This would evolve into me, I think, going to college. And when I went to college, this is in 86. So in 86, what's going on globally? Apartheid. Apartheid was, to that time, what the Palestine-Israel conflict is today. It was the global kind of crisis that united people of color and Black people around it globally. So on campus, we're building shanty towns, just like you see on the news in Columbia University today. For we're going on pro-Palestinian sort of protests. We were doing that, building these little tents and sleeping out on the campus to protest the fact that the United States was invested in funds in South Africa, and we were trying to force them to divest their funds, right? So that added to radicalizing me as well, kind of helping me see things from a global perspective, that we have our fights here, but we also have fights globally. And so that helped me develop a sort of a Pan-African sort of consciousness. And it also was the first time that I now was able to take all this theory I'm reading and all these books and ideas and actually go out and organize in real time, knock on doors, call people, call meetings, preside over an organization, collect dues, do community outreach, do protesting and stuff like that. In terms of my success, the great things that came from my experience was the people I met. I met some of the most beautiful new Africans and Africans you could imagine. Teachers, community members, workers, many of whom took me in when I went to school. in the church I came up in, I mean, everywhere I went, beautiful black people who cared about other black people and invested in black people, hoping that those black people they invested in would give back to the community as well. So I think it's the people I met, the memories I have of some really good people, who many of which are no longer here. I think the fact that we were able to, in some of our campaigns, dismantle some remnants of white supremacy. So we were able to kick some racist white principles out of schools, for instance. We were able to teach Black and Latino residents how to evaluate their kids' school, how to give it a report card, and how to organize to have press conferences, to call these educational leaders into meetings and question them and move to remove them. Challenging Syracuse University in 1988-89, forcing them to agree to 13 demands, most of which around strengthening our African American Studies department. So those, I think, are the successes. The people you meet, the networks. The pitfalls, Brother Yusef, man, goes right to what you said, brother. Definitely you're arrogant, and not even knowing you're arrogant. See, I think it's important for people to understand, people who, when you're arrogant in that way, you don't necessarily think you're arrogant. You think that you're doing what you're supposed to do. You know, so I remember being in panel discussions, man, and oh man, being on the panel in school, and I mean giving it to people. You know, if a sister had if a sister had a perm and blonde hair, woo.
Say you was Umar before Umar.
Oh man. Oh, see, now you hurt my feelings, but I thought we was cool. I'm just playing. Oh man, it was awful. But I thought that that's what, you know, you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get at people. And so definitely I'm gonna say abrasive, and I'm gonna say I was abrasive in some ways, not as empathetic in some ways. I think, and so even now, as I'm 56, I'm looking over these times and I'm going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I feel like Malcolm must have felt when he was doing a speech in a college and a white girl said, "Hey, Mr. Malcolm X, I love what you're doing. How can I help?" He said, "What can I do?" That was it, nothing, and kept walking. Right? He put that in his autobiography. So he probably felt bad. Like lady said, "Man, I didn't have to do that. That was crazy." And I kind of felt like there were positions I took, bridges I burnt, people I could have worked with that I put into a box because they didn't dress like X-Clan like I did at the time and didn't have locks. Right. Didn't have the beads and the oils and the cowrie shells. So I thought they wasn't down and didn't. So I think those are some of the pitfalls. And the only thing I can say about that is, as I still work to be better, those are things that I'm trying not to replicate now, but I'm teaching. Don't judge people by the dashiki they wear. So what? You got the cleanest mudcloth dashiki. So what? What's your views and your values? How are you treating people? Right? Are you creating more empowered people? Or are you devaluing people? I'm looking at the things that are important, not getting caught up in some of the things that I think I probably would have definitely got caught up in. Now I can work with people who, let's say, are not necessarily nationalists. We don't have to agree. I'm not overvaluing agreement. Agreement is not everything. So I think those are some of the pitfalls. I also think, Brother Yusef, that in times when, let's say, I wasn't harsh and was loving and maybe empathetic, because some of our people were brainwashed into thinking that when you got somebody that values studying and values and loves black people and is down with rallies and protests, stay away. They're the boogeyman. They're bad for you. So I think part of the pitfalls is even when we're living righteously and we're acting in a way that's right and exact and beautiful, sometimes our people have been programmed to look upon people like us, so to speak, as stay away from that. I can hang with the drug dealer. I can hang with the hitman for hire. I can hang with the dude that just wants to get draws and sex. But that dude, he talking that. Listen, I had a sister back when I was going to clubs, call myself going to clubs. I had a sister say, "What's your name?" I said, Agyei. Agyei? Tyehimba? What? What? You one of them niggas that change their names? You understand? So, or you see uncle. So sometimes one of the pitfalls was having that sort of barrier of miscommunication or being misjudged because of positions you take, at the same time. Just looking to see. Okay, we got different people coming in, Brother Yusef. Sister Janae Earl doing big things in DC, Sister Janae. And also happy belated to Sister Janae. She's Taurus the Bull as well. And going back to our question, Brother Yusef, did you want to add anything?
I'll just add real quick. I think it's important that we practice patience with our people, along patience with ourselves. If we're really committed to a liberation struggle, that's a protracted struggle, and it requires us to have some internal struggles, internal battles, and bringing to the table what principles and values that are governing with us, how we operate. Because at the end of the day, there's no individual that can liberate black people.
That's right.
It's only a collective can liberate. So it requires us to work with our people, but it requires us to continue to work on ourselves. And I love where we at with these questions, because we tend to put people on pedestals. And I propose these questions for us to demystify that pedestal that people may have put us on and put us back within the people. And it's our commitment, because again, the things that we suffer and face as a people, it's not just our individual right, but our collective right to fight and struggle against those things. And we need to create space to give all of us the time to rest, to get better at this, but also the ability to hold each other accountable. Because again, if there's no accountability, we're twice doing.
Yes, sir. Now, Brother Yusef, I'm going to the next question. We're going to try to get as much of it in, family. Every second Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern is when we meet. We might have to do some of these in the next session.
Yes.
Because I think, time is run out, and that's cool. And brother, I just want to say one thing. When Brother Yusef, when you said patience, that is very critical. The elders would say this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Correct.
You can't get too emotionally worked up and then it's gone and your energy is dissipated and you're not able to do the next rally, the next march, the next protest, the next meeting. They would say you have to keep I think Baldwin said something like, to be a black man is to be in a constant state of rage. It's like you got to keep a constant balanced state of, I'm not feeling this. Rage against the system, but not a bitterness that eats away at you.
Correct.
Or makes you eat away at your own people, but keeping that balance. And so it often tickles me when you run into people who are newer to it. And man, I want to do something. I can't believe this. And they don't see you as seemingly as mad. And they're wondering, well, you say you so-and-so and so-and-so. Why aren't you as mad? He's like, oh, no, I'm very mad, but I understand that our ancestors were dealing with the same thing hundreds of years ago. So this thing that you're seeing is not new. It's very complex. It transforms itself. It manifests in different ways. But to beat it, the race won't go to the person that talks the most, that's the strongest, that's the fastest. It's going to go to the people that's going to persevere, that's going to be here and keep fighting and teaching other people to fight, keep building, So that's the thing. So that patience is important. It's very, very important, because one thing I noticed, a lot of people burned out.
And a
lot of people are not here that was talking this with me in 86. They are doing some other things. And so you got to keep that patience so that you stay the course.
And I would like to suggest, if you're cool with it, we just, the other part of the questions, we just wait till next time, because we only got like 9 minutes, and we just continue.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
I love where you're going with this, because when we put our struggle in a timeline, where we at now, going back to what I said earlier, we can't continue to use white social theory to define Black phenomena. We also can't continue to look outside of our own selves. For examples, like in the 50s and 60s, we were looking internationally. And I'm not saying we should not be international. Let me state that. What I'm saying is that we have enough information to look at our own selves. Give examples, like if we're bringing Garvey from 1920 to 2024 as the same Garvey, we're doing that. We're doing a disservice to ourselves. We need to learn, why didn't Garvey and W. Du Bois work together? Not saying they had to work together, but why they couldn't work together. And in answering that question, we'll find an answer why many of us are not working together now, or why we can't work together. So this is what examining our struggle in that way provides us with the critical analysis of why we're where we at and where we need to be.
My brother, I couldn't agree with you more. We don't have to work with everybody. That's cool, and I agree with that. In addition, if we're going to bring people from the past, because we do need to have some type of cultural continuity, historical memory. So to do that, yes, we need to say, what Malcolm said and thought and went through, what Garvey said, thought and went through, etc. But we should be adding on and tweaking.
Correct.
So the people, this is one of the reasons in school, when I had to pick a track, you get to undergrad and you're doing African American studies, or you have to pick, am I going to go the African track? Am I going to go the African American track? Well, ultimately, I decided to go African American track, having gotten some basics in African history, because I wanted to understand what was going on here, right? How do we change what's going on here and now? And I felt that was the most effective way. But here's the thing: when we say Sankofa, and we say it's not a crime to go back, fetch that which we lost. Yes, that's right. Represent that. That's right.
Yeah.
But fetching implies that you throw something, you go get it, and you come back with it. And what happens so often with our African history and the ancient studies of ancient African civilizations is people stay there. And we need you to get the knowledge, come back here, help us use that past knowledge to move us forward now, in the present, and future. And I think that's one of the things I see that's very much needed in our Black liberation movement today. It's not knocking, it's not saying that we to make a break between Africa or ancient Africa now, but it's saying that we use it. That this is no more is it just, did you know the richest man in history was Mansa Musa? Okay, that's good to know. But we're starving now, and we're dealing with poverty issues now. How do we use our knowledge of ancient Africa, or even 19th century Africa America, to come up with strategies and remedies for now, or questions to raise when we challenge capitalism or imperialism? So that's my thing. So I agree with you that we can't stay stuck. And even now, we can't stay stuck in the present because there's Africans yet and new Africans yet to be born.
Right.
So we got to have people that's actually raising questions about what's it going to be like 50 years from now? What are the skills we're going to need 50 years from now? What are the questions we got to raise 100 years from now? And what do we do now to prepare? So, yeah, you right on the money with that, my brother. You right on the money.
My ability to want to do this show with you is out of my respect for you. You are someone I consider a leader, who I follow and will follow. You are a teacher. I'm a student of yours at times. We don't agree on everything, but I think fundamentally there's a value system that we share, and I have become better as a result of you being in my life, not literally, but just knowing you and through our communication. And I think bringing that to this platform can help contribute to educating others, clearing away a lot of the BS that's out here, and grounding us in what political education is and should be, which is teaching us how to think versus what to think and asking the right question.
Now, brother, you know I'm not going to let you go with bigging me up without returning that. That ain't happening. Family watching. I think I met Brother Yusef 14 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
But I only met physically Brother Yusef last month. This was all through social media. So social media ain't all bad, family. There's some good we can do with it. And one thing that I always told Yusef, and I think he would not be embarrassed, but he felt funny. I say, man, brother, you're almost like a modern day Malcolm in the sense that you have this, you know, he was in the gangs and doing that life, whatever was involved with that. Goes to prison, meets his dad. Like this is something that almost sounds like a movie, but it's real. His dad is like revolutionary, schooling him, sending him, you know, it's amazing. Yusef is taught by his pops and other people. He does his own due diligence and he's reading and studying. He gets out, he hits the ground running and never looks back. The brother at one point, I don't think had a high school diploma. This brother now has his GED or high school diploma, bachelor's degree, master's degree, and doctorate degree. And I believe he has his formal ceremony, his formal graduation is this month. So for me, Yusef represents what happens when people receive that life-sustaining political education and it hits them. And then they have the opportunity to take this invisible knowledge and make it manifest in the real world. So for me, Yusef is deeply inspiring and he is an oft-used example. When I talk to people all the time, if Yusef had $5 for every time I mention his name, he'd be rich. That's a fact because I'm always, you know, talking to, oh yeah, my brother Yusef in Detroit. And that's important that our people, that new Africans have examples of what we can be. So to me, he represents that possibility. He represents why we don't look down on brothers that's slinging, that's taking numbers, you know, that's doing stuff that we may not support, why we don't count them out, because out of those ranks can come some of our brightest and most brilliant. So right back at you, good brother. Right back at you with the and also when I went to Detroit at Brother Yusef's invitation last month, I got to stay in the house that he and his organization rented. Now listen, family. I'm a type person that makes connections. I see a cup, physical cup. I'm thinking of the metaphysical connection. So I was in this house. I'm like, wait, y'all, this house was dilapidated? He said, yeah, y'all renovated this? He said, yeah. I said, what? Man, beautiful art. Beautiful art, family. Food, they got a kitchen, they cooking food, they selling healthy food to the people. Healthy food and beverages. You know, they have it's a meeting place, it's a place people can come to eat, congregate. And I said to myself, this building is Yusef Bunchy Shakur. Yusef is this building. It's a metaphor. He took potential and people saw it, invested in him, namely his father and his mother, who he speaks so endearingly of that it's touching. The great reverence he has for his mother, which is something that I also relate to. And you see, wow, he's like this. This is what happens. We got to have, he teaches us to not sleep on ourselves, to not underestimate ourselves, to see the beauty in ourselves before it's necessarily beautiful. Anybody can see the beauty to Taj Mahal, but who was able to see it before it was beautiful, before it was done? Those are the people that we really need, that can look at that little girl and say, yeah, she's sassy, she comes in the class late and she's not where she's supposed to be, but there's some leadership quality there. Well, that little brother, man, he never stays in his seat, but he always questions. The other students just take what the teacher says. He's always, well, how do we know that? He's always questioning. And we see something. And so, to me, those are some of the things that Brother Yusef represents. And I was not paid for that endorsement. Just so you're, okay, just so you know, it's genuine. You know?
Oh, man,
very genuine.
It's all love and mutual respect, bro.
Yes, sir. Now, I want to see if we had any. Oh, we got the Queen. She says, we have great respect for you, Brother Yusef. Your story is amazing. Salute. Absolutely. And brother, don't you have, oh, and here goes the Queen, all soft and cuddly. You gonna make me cry. Don't be crying up in here, Queen. We have someone that's saying that tribalism is taking root in America. Oh, absolutely. I trust and know it for many years, for many decades.
But again,
absolutely.
And that's where values are so important. If you show me a person without values, you'll see tribalism. And because I think it was in the Destruction of Black Civilization. Dr. Chance Williams talks about Shaka Zulu, how he became greater than the council. But when he was governed by the council, he was part of the tribe. But when the council began to depend on him, things went haywire. And as a value, we had to value the collective, and we had to emerge out of the collective. And where they're leading us and our skills, and as leaders, we will emerge even greater because what the people are investing in us. But if we're pulling the people, that's not going to work. That's going to lead to tribalism because everybody going to want to be the man. That's America.
That's right. Chasing the bag, which is materialism, or wanting to be the man or that chick, which is that kind of egotism. Yeah.
Yep. Head nigger on charge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Listen, oh, by the way, I want to show this. This brother gave me this book when I went to Detroit. This is deep right here. So I think, Brother Yusef, you talked about your father schooling you, but I think these are letters. This is called Scribes of Redemption, letters from an incarcerated father to his incarcerated son. These are the letters compiled that Brother Yusef's dad wrote to him while both were incarcerated. This is beautiful, man. I don't know exactly where you would purchase it, Brother Yusef. Maybe you can get into that. But family, while we're doing this Black Power Cipher, we're often going to be supporting the things we've written and done. This ain't on some we trying to get rich or this is on some, this is our work. We're doing it for you, so you should know about it. Brother Yusef, where can people get this book?
My other website is down. By the time we get back up, I'll share with you where it's active, and they'll be able to get it from there.
Yeah, because something tells me, Brother Yusef, that this would be powerful for young men, period, whether they're incarcerated or not, and probably powerful for young sisters and moms and dads to read. Yeah, so this is very important, family. Check this out. We're going to come back when we come back at our next show in our next month, second Saturday at 2 p.m. with some more information on how to get it. And that said, family, I'm also going to say you might want to cop this leadership book.
Dope book.
That I wrote, Leadership, Philosophy, Ethics, and Practice. Because a lot of the issues we're talking about, we're not responsible for the fact that we were oppressed and enslaved and colonized. That's other people that did that. But we are responsible for our liberation. And one of the key things that we're responsible to do is have good, solid, ethical, competent, conscious leadership. So that's what the book is about. And it's written in very plain language. You can go right to Amazon, type my name in, and check it out. Brother Yusef, any last words, my brother, before we depart from the people?
Thank you. And I'm excited, bro.
There it is. As the Queen says, salute. And she also says powerful. I agree this was a powerful show. Family, this is the Black Power Cipher 3.0. This is the third iteration or incarnation of this concept of the Black Power Cipher. Look forward to a lot of exciting programming, a lot of interesting people and perspectives, and all designed to help us grow and learn and be better and do better. With that said, I guess I'll say peace and Black Power, family. Thanks for joining us for the first episode. Next month, second Saturday, 2 p.m. Second Saturday, 2 p.m. Second Saturday, 2 p.m. Peace, family.